Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. It's Amukelane. We've been requested to wait for DG to sort out her connection. It looks like everybody who's connecting from the DPSA's building is experiencing a little bit of challenges. So may I please request that we give DG time to connect and then we will start with the program. Thank you. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm informed that DG has joined. So I believe we can start with the event. Once again, welcome to the launch of the Public Service Amendment Regulations 2023. I'll be directing the program for today. As I said, my name is Amkelane Baloi. I'm a legal admin officer in the DPSA's Legal Services. On our program today, we have DG of the Public Service and Administration, Department of Public Service and Administration, Monsieur Liswa Makasi. She'll be doing the opening remarks. We will then have a keynote address from our Minister, or Honorable Minister Nokolo Kivet, The Chief Director of the DPSA's Legal Services, Ms. Renisha Naidu, will take us through the presentation on the public service regulations. We will then open the floor for questions and answers and give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. We will have our closing remarks from our Honorable Deputy Minister, Dr. Chanapilana Majake. I will hand over to the DG to do her opening remarks. Over to you, DG. Thank you.
Thank you, Amu, and good morning to the Minister, to the Deputy Minister, and all the colleagues who are in attendance today. I do want to apologize for the problems with my connection. I left home to connect from the office because I didn't want any problems. And I was connected from 9:15, and by the time we had to start, the system just kicked me out, and I do apologize for that. So that is me, and with your permission, if you allow me to switch off the video so that it doesn't create problems again for me, I will ask for that permission. I'm quite excited and happy today to really that we are launching these public service amendment regulations 2023. My minister, Honorable Nokolo Kivit, Minister for the Public Service and Administration, my Deputy Minister, Honorable Dr. Chanapilane Majake, Deputy Minister for the Public Service, the DPSA team that is responsible for the development of the regulations, including our DDGs who are in attendance and our members of EXCO from DPSA, all senior managers from the public service, public servants, stakeholders, members of the media, and our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is with great pleasure that I extend a warm welcome to every one of you who has joined us here today for this important occasion, the launch of the Public Service Amendment Regulations 2023. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all distinguished guests, representatives from various government departments, and our dedicated public service employees who have made time to be with us today. Your participation and support is truly invaluable as we continue this journey of transforming, professionalizing, and strengthening our public service. The Public Service Amendment Regulations, which are being launched today, represent a significant step forward in our continuous efforts to build a capable, efficient, and ethical public service that meets the needs and aspirations of our nation. These regulations serve as a catalyst for positive change, providing a solid foundation for enhancing transparency, accountability, and professionalism within our public institutions. Throughout the development process of these regulations, our primary focus has been on addressing the challenges and gaps that have hindered the optimal functioning of our public service. We have carefully considered stakeholder input, expert recommendations, and international best practice to ensure that these regulations are comprehensive, practical, and tailored to the unique context of our country. The regulations encompass a wide range of critical areas. They aim to enhance transparency and accountability at all levels of the public service. They emphasize ethical conduct, management of conflict of interest, and the disclosure of interest to maintain the highest standard of integrity within the public service. They also establish mechanisms to address non-compliance, promote efficient performance of official duties, and safeguard the reputation of the public service. Through these regulations, we aim to reduce the red tape in the public service. We aim to reduce the reporting requirements that colleagues have to do at DPSA on a number of areas, in particular, the areas of human resource management and development. We aim to have an integrated approach to these regulations, to implementation of these regulations. However, we must remember that the launch of this regulation is just the beginning of our efforts in the professionalization agenda. Implementation and effective enforcement are key to translating these regulations into tangible improvements in our public service. It requires the collective efforts and commitment of all stakeholders involved. This includes government, public servants, civil society, and the citizens that we serve. I encourage all of us to embrace these regulations as an opportunity for a positive change. Let us work together to foster a culture of excellence, professionalism, and integrity within our public service. By doing so, we can build trust, attract and retain top talent, and deliver services that truly make a difference in the lives of our fellow citizens. In conclusion, I would like to express my deep appreciation to the Minister and the Deputy Minister who have provided insight and guidance in this process, to all the individuals and the task team members who have contributed to the development and implementation of the Public Service Amendment Regulations. Your dedication, expertise, and an unwavering commitment to the betterment of the public service is commendable. Once again, I extend my warmest welcome to all of you. Let us seize this moment to reaffirm our shared vision of a capable and ethical public service, a service that proudly serves the people of our great nation and makes sure no one is left behind. As we launch these regulations today, I am happy that a project that started 3 years ago is finally bearing the fruits, in the sense that we are taking the regulations out and we are hoping and want to ensure that our employees in the public service will take these regulations seriously. They will be a guide and compass for them in delivering on the work that we are expected to deliver on as public servants. Thank you, and I wish you all a productive and inspiring launch event. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. Thank you. I would like to... sorry, we had a little bit of a glitch on our network when we opened the program, and because of that, I apologize that I did not recognize protocol. I would like to correct that, please. To Honorable Nokolo Kivit, the Minister for the Public Service and Administration, the Honorable Dr. Chana Pilana Majake, Deputy Minister for the Public Service and Administration, the DG, all senior managers, public servants, stakeholders, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. The next item on our agenda is a keynote address from our minister. Therefore, I would like to hand over to the minister to deliver her keynote address. Thank you.
And thank you, Amu. A good morning to your good self. A good morning also to our Deputy Minister. Can I correct everyone? We have Honorable Dr. Kana Pilane Majake, not Chana. The name is Kana Pilane Majake. At least from DPSA, we must be able to call our names properly. Ms. Yoliswa Makasi, our DG in the department, and all other DGs that have joined us today, the team from DPSA, all senior managers, the public servants, our stakeholders, the members of the media. Let me greet everyone. Good morning. Let me start by saying today, being the birthday of one of our stalwarts, Tambo. If he was still alive, he would be 106 years old today. And that we would be then saying happy birthday to him. But because he's no more, we say, may his soul rest in peace. And would like to, in talking to public servants, remind you of the speech by the Honorable Nelson Mandela on the occasion of the opening, or the naming rather, of the hospital, the O.R. Tambo Memorial Hospital in Boksburg, on the 16th of April 1998. President Nelson Mandela recognized OR's vision for the country's public servants, and he said, and I quote, "Today, our public servants, including health workers, are custodians of the tradition of Oliver Tambo. I believe that his lifelong sacrifice will only find fulfillment if the true meaning of service to our people is taken by every one of us. Whether you change the linen or stitch up the wounds, cook the food or dispense the medicines, it is in your hands to help build a public service worthy of all those who gave their lives for the dream of democracy." I found those words quite profound and extremely relevant for us today, because for us, we have a constitution which talks to the same spirit. Madiba spoke those words in the spirit of recommitting public servants to the constitutional mandate of serving all the people of South Africa by responding to people's needs, by providing government services to all in a fair and unbiased way, by working in a professional, honest, and accountable way. And this is etched in our preamble of the Constitution, that we all need to work to improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person. I felt it necessary that I remind all of us about this very, very important commitment that our Constitution enjoins us to observe. The amendments that we are going to talk about today, yes, are amendments that are technical in nature. They deal with corrections, they deal with providing clarity where interpretation challenges exist, and they are intended to streamline reporting and administrative procedures. It is therefore important to note that this is the first step towards a broader effort of reviewing the entire public service regulations to align with the Public Service Amendment Bill, which is currently under consideration in Parliament. And in keeping with government's commitment to reducing red tape and onerous reporting, the amendment regulations have removed all required, well, let me rather say not all, but those reporting requirements in the public service regulations that contribute to red tape. Because red tape delays progress. Red tape frustrates those who want to really do and conduct their business in a manner that gives meaning and real interpretation to the objects of our Constitution. And therefore, the intention with the removal of these reporting requirements, it is to limit reporting on matters that are, we need to limit the reporting to matters that are absolutely necessary, and alleviate the burden placed on corporate services units within departments. The process envisages that corporate services units in departments must start to play a more meaningful and strategic role in supporting departments. A capable, professional, and ethical public service can only be built on ethical public servants who are honest, who are trustworthy, and who are reliable. The amendment regulations have strengthened the code of conduct for employees by requiring, among others, that employees must maintain the confidentiality of information. They must report non-compliance with the Act, including non-compliance by heads of departments. Employees must refrain from claiming intellectual property over work produced in the performance of their duties. They must not bring the departments or the public service into disrepute. If we are truly to achieve a professionalized public service, it is necessary for the conduct of employees to be exemplary and to ensure that the credibility of the public service is restored. There needs to be better processes to detect there needs to be better processes to detect and deal with employees who benefit unlawfully, either due to their employment in the public service or from engaging in unlawful activities. These amendments strengthen the financial disclosure system to require the disclosure of further financial interests, to safeguard the confidentiality of submitted forms and registers, to introduce lifestyle audits within a regulated framework, and to allow access of disclosed information for purposes of instituting and assisting disciplinary action and criminal proceedings where necessary and where authorized. In addition, more stringent periods on prohibition on re-employment of dismissed employees is introduced. Fostering a culture of anti-corruption and ethics is a critical priority for this government, particularly within the public service, within the public service space. The regulations introduce provisions that heads of departments must establish robust systems that actively encourage reporting and unethical conduct. These systems prioritize the confidentiality and proper management of allegations, ensuring that individuals can come forward with information in a safe and secure environment. Additionally, an information system will be implemented to effectively record and monitor allegations, maintain comprehensive records and outcomes, identify systemic weaknesses and recurring risks. The system will play a pivotal role in our ongoing efforts to combat corruption, enable departments to promptly identify and address vulnerabilities within their environments. The availability of systems for reporting corrupt activities is only effective if employees and citizens are aware of the systems. Therefore, the regulations now require a head of department to ensure employees and citizens are aware of such system. The appointment of dedicated ethics officers is enabled through the amendment regulations in an effort to strengthen ethics management, especially in more vulnerable departments. These officers will promote integrity, provide advice on ethical matters, identify and report unethical behavior, oversee the financial disclosure system, and supervise remunerative work performed outside the department. Furthermore, an ethics committee must be established to provide oversight on ethics management within the department. To attract the most skilled and suitable persons into the public service, the provisions on recruitment have been strengthened. As a minimum, adverts must be advertised in the Department of Public Service and Administration, a vacancy circular, which is widely and easily accessible at no cost to departments. But departments are able to offer higher salaries under confined circumstances. The use of information communication technology has become a necessity to achieve efficiencies, to enhance productivity, and to manage data as well as information. The amendment regulations have formally established the Government Information Technology Council that must drive ICT initiatives in the public service. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, the launch of the Public Service Amendment Regulations of 2023 represents a significant stride towards building a capable and ethical public service. These regulations provide clarity, enhance transparency, and promote accountability. As we implement these measures, I call on all public servants to embrace the principles of integrity, professionalism, and dedication to serving our nation and its citizens. Together, let us work towards a South Africa that leaves no one behind, and where our public service stands as a beacon of excellence and a model for the world. As we wish the Springboks the best in this strive tomorrow, in their strives to bring the cup back home, let me say, as the public servants, we also have this duty to our nation to work as the Springboks are doing to ensure that indeed we transform South Africa to be a better place, leaving no one behind. I wish to thank all participants. The last time I checked, it was 511 participants, and now we are at 681 participants, which indicates that there's a good attendance, but also which indicates that we can do a lot more just by strengthening our role in utilizing the ICT effectively. I wish to thank you and wish you all the best, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. As we move along on our program, ladies and gentlemen, next up, we have a presentation from the Chief Director, DPSA Legal Services, Ms. Renisha Naidu. She will be taking us through the presentation on the public service regulations as amended. Ms. Naidu, over to you.
Good morning to the Minister, good morning to the Deputy Minister, good morning to the DG of the DPSA, good morning colleagues, good morning to the media houses and members of the public that may have joined us. Thank you very much for affording us the opportunity as the DPSA to launch and present our regulations as we have amended them today. I'm going to try and put them up. Thank you very much. Can somebody please just confirm, Amu, can you please confirm that you can see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So as the Minister has indicated, we have, through the amendments of the public service regulations, we have the Minister has approved these public service regulations with effect from the 1st of November 2023. The regulations were gazetted on the 20th of October 2023, so those so that the public and departments would be made aware of it. We will also, through our circulars, etc., assist departments in providing assistance with implementing these regulations. I think it's important, as the Minister indicated, we went into this process to provide technical amendments where there were interpretational problems. We also went into these regulations with an effort to reduce reporting to the DPSA. We also looked at this process in line with the amendment bills that are currently before Parliament. And to that extent, we are noting that as we go forward in the DPSA, we will be embarking on larger processes to amend the regulations as aligned with the Public Service Amendment Bill. But these regulations are therefore limited to a certain degree, but it is expected that they will have the impact that we need in the short term. In terms of reporting requirements, it is important to note that there were 3 regulations that required reports to be submitted to the DPSA. We have since amended them to remove these reporting requirements from departments, but we have still maintained some effort of checks and balances. In terms of Regulation 21(2)D, we have removed the requirement to report conflicts of interest to the DPSA. We have also, in Regulation 29, removed the reporting on outcomes of efficiency and effectiveness tests in the department. And we have also removed then the requirement to report to the DPSA on Regulation 35, which is relating to the organizational functionality assessments that departments undertake. In terms of ethical conduct, we have in Regulation 13H, we have removed certain words, and the words that you see in the brackets are where the deletions are. We have removed the requirement or the reference to any person. It's a redundant provision. And we have also then provided that any gift or remuneration that exceeds a cumulative amount of 500 Rand per year needs to be approved by the relevant executive authority before any employee decides to retain that gift or benefit. In terms of Regulation 14 on the performance of official duties, we have also enhanced and augmented Regulation 14 to the extent that we have cleaned up the language And we have also provided for the release of information where persons who are not authorized to release that information cannot then release that information. And we have strengthened how the state manages its information, simply because there are a lot more stringent requirements under the Protection of Personal Information Act that requires departments to be a lot more vigilant in how they handle information, especially personal information. In terms of reporting on non-compliance to the Act, we have also strengthened provisions in that if there is non-compliance by a head of department, we have now stipulated different procedures for which to report that non-compliance by the head of the department to then the relevant executive authority. We have also strengthened how we deal with intellectual property. There's a sense in the public service that work done during the course and scope of employment is then retained as intellectual property by employees, and we want to clarify that that is not the case. We've also then augmented provisions to ensure that that employees are aware that the manner in which they conduct themselves, whether in the public or whether within the department, must not bring his or her department or the public service into disrepute. So we are hoping that as we move to professionalizing the public service, we are also going to have a cadre that professionalizes within the public service. In terms of Regulation 18, and this deals with the disclosure of employees' interests, what we have done is we have cleaned up the terminology that's used to eradicate any confusion in the way that the words were written. We've defined what a financial year is, and that is the period between 1 April of a year to 31 March of the next year. And we have then amended the regulations to reflect that interpretation. In terms of requirements for interest to be disclosed, we have also augmented the financial disclosure system, where we also now require, as part of the disclosure processes, for financial liabilities to be disclosed by employees. The intent of this is to then ensure that when assets and liabilities are verified and when lifestyle audits are conducted, the information is available to institutions to do that. We have also then provided, as the minister indicated, we have also strengthened our register process and the confidentiality of information, again recognizing the papaya and the need to manage personal information that comes out of the financial disclosure system. We have also then provided for persons who investigate, initiate, and conduct disciplinary proceedings to have access to these disclosure forms. We have also provided that law enforcement agencies who are charged with investigating and prosecuting an alleged offense must also have access to these forms, and any other person that is authorized by statute. And the important aspect of this is that if lifestyle audits are done, and if lifestyle audits determine that there is wealth that cannot be explained, it might be necessary, and it is necessary, for law enforcement agencies to then be referred with these matters to investigate and deal with matters. Similarly, it is important for departments then to also, if matters relate to misconduct, to also use these forms to prosecute and initiate misconduct proceedings. In terms of Regulation 21, it's a new regulation that has been inserted into the public service regulations. And this regulation seeks to deal with the aspect of financial disclosures. And what we are saying in this particular regulation is that departments are required to conduct a risk analysis with the information that's submitted through the financial disclosure system. And in the event that the risk analysis indicates that there's a discrepancy between the information submitted through the disclosure system and the income of the employee, there is a need to then, as a first step, consult with the employee to determine an explanation for why income does not tie up with what the financial disclosure is indicating as assets. In the event that the explanation by the employee is not sufficient, there must be mechanisms to address the discrepancy and refer the matter to the relevant law enforcement agencies, through disciplinary processes where that will be required. So I think the important thing to mention to departments is that this is the lifestyle process. This is what lifestyle audits generally do. The outcomes of lifestyle audits then must be dealt with by either relevant law enforcement agencies if there are criminal actions that need to be investigated. That is not within the domain of the department. At that point, it must be handed over to those law enforcement agencies for further action. But what is within the course and scope of the department's authority is to deal with discipline matters that may arise out of those discrepancies that are identified. In terms of anti-corruption and ethics functions, there are already provisions within the public service regulations that require reporting and require measures of how matters of corruption and other unethical conduct can be managed. And what we have done to those particular regulations is we have now ensured that HODs must make sure that there are mechanisms to ensure that employees and citizens are made aware of systems. So while the systems have always been provided for, that HODs must have systems, what we have seen is that there is not much awareness on what those systems are. So people can't access it, citizens can't access it, employees have difficulty accessing it. So we have made it a requirement now under the regulations that HODs must make these systems available, and there must be awareness around it. In terms of gifts, we have also then provided for a records management of gifts. So there must be now a record of all gifts that are disclosed within the department. Regulation 23, we've gone a bit further. We've provided for ethics officers. Currently, the provisions of the Public Service Act suggest that, or the Public Service Regulations rather, suggest that EAs must designate ethics officers. This usually entailed that existing ethics officers or existing employees who are tasked with functions like risk assessment, etc., are then also designated to manage ethics and behavioral issues within the department. What we are suggesting is that departments now within their own structure can consider the appointment of specified ethics officers so that the function of ethics is elevated in particular departments, especially those departments where there is a higher reporting of unethical behavior and corruption, and where dedicated resources are required to manage those particular issues. So departments are now authorized to appoint people. In terms of, and staying with the ethics functions, in terms of Regulation 23, we have provided that the head of department must establish an ethics committee or designate an existing committee. And we have required that the chair of that committee should be a member of the SMS, and preferably we are suggesting it should remain a deputy director general. We have made this amendment simply because we understand that some departments don't have deputy director generals. So we are suggesting that it then be to accommodate application challenges, that it must at the very least be a member of the SMS who chairs this particular committee. In terms of strategic planning provisions, we have included in the provision that all establishments, all departments approved establishments must be published on their departmental websites so that it is publicly available. What we find is that some departments don't publish their approved organizational structures, which makes it then difficult for the public to access and understand what are the roles of each department and who performs those functions. We have also inserted a provision that speaks to the consultation processes that takes place with the Minister for Public Service and Administration on organizational structures. We know that the regulation currently provides that where a department is amending or reviewing organizational structures, there is a requirement to consult the Minister for Public Service and Administration. What we have found is that after those consultations, departments in some cases have not amended their structures in alignment with the consultation process. It seems like those processes get ignored in some instances. So what we are suggesting is that departments must keep and record reasons why they deviate from that which is proposed by the Minister for Public Service and Administration. We are not requesting, and I want to reiterate, we are not requesting that those reasons be submitted to the DPSA. We want departments to record it, so when there is a need to request information, we are able then to access that information. In terms of Regulation 34A, this is a new regulation that's been inserted into the Public Service Regulation. What this regulation seeks to do, it seeks to deal with processes to abolish government components and specialized service delivery units. So in the 2016 regulations as they stand, there are processes to follow in terms of when you establish government components and specialized service delivery units, but there isn't a provision that specifically guides departments in terms of how departments would then abolish these government components and specialized service delivery units when the need arises. So what we have done is we've clarified processes. It is not similar to the establishment processes for obvious reasons. We have ensured that through these processes that when these organizational forms get disestablished, that the staff of those particular institutions is then dealt with, as well as the resources that go with those institutions. In addition, when these institutional forms are usually established, there are processes through Parliament to have notices approved, to delegate functions, and to streamline processes that usually occur. And therefore, it is necessary for those processes then to be unraveled and to be then dealt with through the parliamentary process, so that, as we have suggested, Parliament should look at those when these institutions are established. Similarly, we are saying that Parliament should then have regard when they are disestablished. In terms of setting of highest salaries, and this is contained in Regulation 44, there were many challenges that departments experienced in the setting of highest salaries. The first difficulty is that we have certain OSD dispensations within the public service that don't allow for the use of Regulation 44 to set higher salaries. As we know, the OSDs have their own built-in mechanisms for dealing with the awarding of higher salaries and the movement across OSDs. So we have made this regulation then subject to what an OSD contains. We have also dealt with counter offers, and these are then employees who are within the system who get offered higher or get offered other jobs with higher salaries. What we are allowing and what we are clarifying is that a department may then retain the services of those employees by awarding a higher salary notch closest to the external offer. So you will match the offer, and you will go to the one higher notch that's closest to that offer. The second amendment we are doing is to clarify the interpretation challenges in Regulation 2, Subregulation 2D, which talks to a counteroffer may not exceed the salary level of the post. We are inserting the words occupied by the employee. So what we are saying in that is that any counteroffer, the employee continues to be employed in the post in which he or she occupies at that time, and that counteroffer cannot exceed the salary level of the post of that employee. In terms of Regulation 44.3, this deals with the recruitment of employees. And what this talks to is where a department advertises or goes through a recruitment process and then seeks to recruit an employee or seeks to recruit a person who is either an employee or who is not an employee. So we broaden the scope of this particular regulation. Previously, we allowed for a higher salary only to an employee, and those who were not part of the public service were then required to start at the first notch of a salary level. What we have done now is to say that if people, whether you are employed in the public service or outside of the public service, if you apply for a job and if you are currently earning a salary higher than the minimum notch, there is discretion on the executive authority to then award you a commencing higher salary than the minimum notch. But there are parameters under which we have provided that this can be done. There must have been a recruitment process. The person who is being recruited must be earning a higher salary immediately before the date of appointment. And for colleagues on the platform who implement these provisions, I really want to reiterate, if the employee is currently unemployed, it means that that person cannot be awarded a higher salary. If the person was employed in the public service, left the public service, and is currently unemployed, there is no authority to allow a department to match the salary of the employee when the employee was in the public service. So what it's saying is that at the time of appointment, if that person is employed and if that person is earning a higher salary, that is the salary which an EA can match. The highest salary also cannot exceed the closest highest salary on the notch of the post. So what we're saying is that you must maintain the salary level of the post. You cannot exceed the salary level of the post. And the second element is that you cannot exceed, so your recruitment salary will be the closest higher notch. So if you're earning a salary outside of the public service or in another department that is at that particular salary level, the executive authority can then elect to award you the closest higher salary notch as long as it stays within the salary level of the post. In terms of Regulation 49, this deals with overtime. What we have found is that departments have been coming to the DPSA for deviations from these provisions. And what we are suggesting is that as departments approve overtime, there must be cognizance and there must be firstly an approved overtime policy, which is currently in the regs. The overtime must be pre-approved unless it's emergency work. The overtime must also then is limited in terms of compensation. So there are limits in terms of how much you can pay in respect of overtime. There is also now new insertions in the regulations to ensure that there is alignment with the Basic Conditions of Employment Act or a collective agreement. So any approval cannot then be inconsistent with those provisions. The hours of overtime is also managed in these processes and cannot exceed that which is contained in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And overtime must be in the interest of service delivery. And the last element that we are saying to departments as you approve overtime is that the funds that are available within the budget, the funds must be available within the budget of the department for that overtime to be approved. In Regulation 56A, we have inserted a new provision on reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation usually deals with workplace needs or the needs of employees with disabilities in relation to the workplace. And what we have done is to provide some sort of guidance to HODs as they develop policies within which the department should ensure that persons living with disabilities are able to manage their employment relations. And what we are saying in those processes is that the workplace must be made accessible. There must be access to information and communication. There must be assistive devices and technology that's provided. There must be necessary tools and assistance for the performance of the employee's duties, as well as to manage the safety and well-being and regulate the work arrangements. So these are all things that should form part of departmental policies that are approved by heads of department. It is also subject to any limits that are determined by the minister. So there will be a DPSA central policy that will guide the parameters within which departments may develop their policies. In terms of general conditions of employment, this particularly is to deal with a temporary appointment in the public service. People in corporate services will know this is additional to the establishment. What we have done is we have primarily sought to align the public service regulations largely to the Labor Relations Act. Colleagues will know that the Labor Relations Act specifies conditions under which persons additional to the establishment or persons who are appointed temporarily must be appointed temporarily. Usually, and in terms of the Labor Relations Act, if you employ people who should not be temporary, but rather permanent, you fall the risk of having those people confirmed as permanent officials. So it's very important as departments use these provisions to employ persons temporarily, there must be justified reasons why you would do that. The rationale behind these provisions is that you shouldn't employ people who do permanent functions on a temporary basis. It disadvantages employees and it disadvantages the public service. So what we are saying to curtail the abuse of persons being appointed additional to the establishment to the detriment of employees is that we are saying that the circumstances under which you will be appointed temporarily additional to the establishment are now predefined. And we've defined it in this particular slide, which says that the post is expected to be absent or the incumbent of the post is expected to be absent, and therefore the duties cannot be performed, and that will allow the department to then bring in temporary support. There is also a temporary increase in the volume of work, and we are saying that that period when there's an increase in volume of work, it cannot exceed 12 months. If it's exceeding 12 months, then it means there's a problem with your structure. An employee's post has been abolished and he or she cannot be transferred into another post. So this usually occurs when there's restructuring and employees are held additional to the establishment until suitable jobs can be found for those employees. And the employee is part of a developmental program. Those people are usually appointed additional to the establishment. That includes your interns and graduate program employees. We are also talking about project-based work. So where you are bringing in or you are expected to perform some project of a limited or defined duration, then you are allowed to bring in people additional to the establishment. But again, that must be justified why that project is temporary and the employees can only be linked for the duration of that particular time. And then we've provided for where there is any other justifiable reasons to employ staff temporarily. and that period again can't exceed 12 months, which is inclusive of any extended or renewed period. There is no longer a requirement for departments to come to the Minister for Public Service and Administration should they exceed the 12 months, because we are now clarifying that you cannot, under those circumstances, exceed 12 months. There's new regulations on transfers. As colleagues will know, there has never been defined regulations in respect of the transfer provisions. What we have done in Regulation 62A is we've provided for what should happen when employees are transferred between departments. We've provided that the EAs of the two departments must agree. We've also provided for due regard to be had to the inherent requirements of the job, but at the very least, employees who are transferred must have the competencies to do that particular job. We've also provided for provisions that prevent or prohibit the transfer of employees from offices or into a post in the office of the minister or deputy minister or the deputy minister. The reason we do that is that those posts in those particular private offices are now being employed on a temporary basis linked to terms of those members of the executive. In terms of advertising, we have also done some amendments to these regulations in respect of advertising. The principles around advertising is that there should be open participation in employment in the public service. So adverts should be as open as possible. And adverts should also be cost effective. The DPSA has a circular that it issues. And what we are saying to departments is that you must, as a minimum, advertise in that vacancy circular. That gives you a wide reach candidates, but it also advertising in that vacancy circular. However, if departments wish to go beyond the vacancy circular, they can then consider advertising within their departments, within their regions, and also in newspapers that have media national coverage. We are also saying that an advertisement contemplated in that regulation, so any advertisement of a post must be advertised within 3 months of that vacancy arising. We are also saying that all funded vacant posts must be filled within 8 months. So what you will see in these regulations is that we are moving towards very reduced periods for recruitment. So departments must put in place better measures to ensure that vacancies are filled quite expeditiously. In terms of Regulation 66, this talks to the filling of posts in the offices of an executive authority and a deputy minister and the deputy president. What Regulation 66 currently does in the process is that it allows members of the executive to fill posts in their immediate office. And this is support staff. So it's the posts that support the relevant executive authority in their day-to-day functions, like the PA and the parliamentary officers, etc. These posts are appointed on a temporary basis. And what we are saying in these regulations is that when persons are appointed in terms of this particular regulation, those persons may not be transferred into the department and they may not be appointed on a permanent basis. We have also made provision in these regulations to provide for the support staff for the deputy president. In terms of Regulation 67, and these are your selection processes, we know that once posts are advertised, they go through what is supposed to be very rigorous selection and recruitment processes. As part of the selection processes, there is a selection committee that then makes recommendations to the relevant head of executive authority, who is the approving authority for appointments unless it's delegated. And what we are now doing through these regulations is that we are enhancing provisions for what happens when the selection committee is unable to find a suitable candidate, what should be the process that should be followed. And we are suggesting that that process should either be headhunting or re-advertisement. The second issue that we are regulating under this particular selection process is where a recommendation from a selection committee is made to the executive authority, and the executive authority is not satisfied that that recommendation is the most suitable candidate. Then what we are saying is that, one, the executive authority must record the reasons for not making that appointment, and they must record those reasons in writing and approve then, as a consequence of not appointing anyone in that post, either a headhunting process or the re-advertisement of that post. In terms of Regulation 87A, there is provision now being made for how the terms of HODs should be dealt with on extension. And we've prescribed requirements for under which extensions of HODs should be considered. And we are saying that the relevant executive authority may, at the expiry of the term of office of a head of department, extend that term for a period of not more than 5 years at a time if the head of department achieved an overall average performance rating of fully effective in relation to his or her duty. So we are saying that as the Public Service Act allows the extension of contracts of HODs, as EAs do that, it is necessary for the performance of the HOD to be evaluated in terms of how they performed over the previous term. There is also a requirement that the HOD must continue to meet the inherent requirements of the job, and the HOD must continue to remain a fit and proper person. So those are minimum requirements under which HOD contracts and terms will be extended. We are also putting in provisions to limit the extension of contracts to not more than 6 months before the expiry. So what this basically prevents is that it prevents contracts of HODs being renewed on year 2 of the 5-year period. So we're saying that it should be within the last 6 months of that expiry of the contract when this consideration can be made and when this contracts can be extended. My last few slides are on the the acquisition and the use of ICT resources. We have heard the Minister extend her views on the fact that as ICT develops, there is a need more and more for us to strengthen how we use ICT in the public service. What we have provided, and again, relating to how we deal with information, a head of department must ensure that information of the department is collected, processed, stored, and disseminated appropriately, and that there are improved knowledge management practices. And I think these are fundamental to ensuring that there's good governance and there's good information sharing across the department within the parameters of what can be done. So those are new provisions that are underlined. In sub-regulation 2, we have also then put in a provision that any acquisition, management, and use of ICT by the department must promote public access to information and encourage public participation. So it's important as we go through the process of reforming our ICT that we ensure that it must enable the public to access our information and participate in our processes more effectively using ICT. In terms of the last slide, which deals with the Government Information Technology Council and its offices, We have for many years had an informal management of the Government Information Technology Council, which is the GTOC. And what we are doing now in these regulations is that we are defining very clearly what the role of the GTOC is in the public service and what the role of its employees are. So we say that the minister establishes the GTOC as an interdepartmental forum to improve electronic government and information management. What that essentially does is that it brings all of your IT personnel or your heads of your IT units in various departments together in one forum to ensure that as government processes the use of ICT and the acquisition of ICT and the manner in which ICT is used, it does so in a manner that brings all departments on board. So that is the function of the GTO, or that is the purpose of the GTO. The GTO also then is required to advise on measures to improve integrated ICT systems across the public service, to propose and advise on appropriate ICT solutions and practices, to support information or ICT monitoring and planning in the public service, and to collaborate to use and improve the use of ICT in the public service. So you will see that through these provisions, there is a view that there should be more integration in terms of the use of ICT in the public service, leveraging where we can on what good practices exist across the public service. What we are saying is that a head of department shall nominate an employee of a relevant department as a GTO officer, who shall then become a member of the GTO Council. The GTO Council will be chaired by an employee of the DPSA that is designated by the minister. The role of the GTO officers are also clarified in the regulations to support heads of department in terms of ICT strategies, innovate methods to digitize or digitalize ICT within the department, establishing reliable and secure information and technology systems, services, and infrastructure, optimizing expenditure, reducing duplication, increasing interoperability of ICT systems, and managing ICT generally in terms of its assets. So you will see, colleagues, that the GTO Council is now being reinforced, and the hope is that we will see ICT come to the forefront of the public service through these processes. With that, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Naidu. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the presentation on the amendments to the public service regulations. Next on our program is the question and answer session. I see we have already received a number of questions on the chats, and how we're going to do it is we will give options for people to raise their hands and ask questions, and also take the questions on the chats. We have members of the task team, that was dealing with the regulations within the DPSA. I would like to propose that as we take hands, maybe if members of the task team can just check on the chat if there are any questions they can respond to which are relevant to their areas of work. The request is that as you respond to a question, please refer to the person's name who asked the question and reply to their questions. I will take the first 10 round, the first 10 hands, if there are any hands, then we will give the DPSA a chance to respond to those questions. And if there are more than 10 hands, we will try again. So ladies and gentlemen, this is your opportunity to ask questions. Okay, I see we have.
Hi, Amu.
Sorry,
so we have we have quite a few hands, and also we have quite a few questions on the chat. So my suggestion is that, so we have questions on the Q&A, and then we have questions on the chat. So my suggestion is that we first deal with the written questions, and then we'll take the hands. I can read out the questions on the Q&A. Is that fine with you?
Yes, that's fine. Psyche, thank you.
Thank you. So the first question is from Ngosi P. Nyandu. Excellent input from the guests. Why the state as the employer accepts resignations of managers who face disciplinary actions? Allowing this to continue means the state protects and supports unethical conduct. That's the first question. Should I maybe move to the next one or allow for a response to that?
Psyche, sorry, maybe if we can just try to take a number of questions at a time.
Okay.
5, 10. Yes.
Okay. And then we have one from Louisa Reitener. The question is, if vacant posts are to be filled within 8 months, will this see the amendment of the acting allowance remuneration period too? And then the third one is from Mabato Mfikwe. With regard to transfers, do the new amendments allow for EA staff transfer to the department for the duration of the executive authority's term of office? I'll just repeat that. With regards to transfers, do the new amendments allow for executive authority staff transfer to the department for the duration of the executive authority's term of office? And then we have another one from, we have another one from Dobani Munyai. In terms of amended incentive policy framework, employees on certain levels are expected to grade progress from one level to the next, that is level 9 to level 10. In case of counteroffer, Regulation 44, the counteroffer is limited to the level that the employee has occupied. The amended regulations have not taken into consideration the grade progression, because in the example of level 9 grade progressing to 10, level 10 should be the level to be considered and not level 9 that the employee is currently occupied. Yeah, that's about most of the questions on the Q&A, Program Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Psyche. I would like to hand over to the Team DPSA, the task team, and Ms. Naidu to respond to the questions. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Amu. Thank you, Saki. Maybe let me start, and then colleagues of DPSA can perhaps join and make comments. So the first question on resignations of employees who are being subjected to disciplinary action and then resigning to avoid those particular disciplinary processes. The difficulty we have with resignations is that we can't stop employees from resigning. That's the principle of labor law. It's a resignation is a one-way action by an employee. What the employer has as an obligation is that when an employee resigns, that employee has to serve notice, and those periods are prescribed in the regulations. So what we say in the Public Service Act as well as the regulations is that when the employer determines a lesser notice period, if there are pending disciplinary processes, the employer cannot then allow the employee to exit on a shorter notice period than what is prescribed. So if the employee must serve 30 days notice, it is ideal that the department push to finalize those disciplinary processes within the 30-day period. So unfortunately, if the department delays and is unable to conclude during that notice period, the difficulty is that, I'm sorry, Mr. Kunene.
Dr. Kunene, please mute your mic. Dr. Kunene.
Secretariat, can you please mute him?
Handled, DG, thank you.
Thank you very much, Saki. So that's how resignations and discipline is managed. These departments must really try to do it within the notice period. In terms of filling of vacant posts, the acting allowance policies will continue to apply until they are amended. Colleagues must recall that acting policies are determined largely through collective bargaining processes. There is no intention to undermine those collective agreements. What we are saying is that these posts must be filled within 8 months. It is a reasonable time period, and it should be done. Employees acting within that would receive the acting allowances as per the acting policies. In terms of a transfer of staff from the ministerial offices or the executive offices, what the regulations are doing now is preventing staff that come in through the Regulation 66 process to be transferred within the organization. So we are saying any staff that's appointed linked to the term of a minister or a deputy minister or the deputy president or the president or MECs or premiers must then align with the term of the office of that executive, and they must be linked to the term of that executive and cannot be then transferred into the department to provide services within the department. They remain as employees within the office supporting that executive. In terms of the provisions on retention of persons, I'm hoping my remuneration team is here who can assist, or we can come back to that question, please. I just need to double check it. Amo, we can take the other questions and I'll come back to that if the remuneration team is not here to assist.
Okay, Team DPSA, anybody from remuneration to help? In the meantime, I would like us to go to the questions that we have on the chats. I will take 3 questions and then we will respond to those. The first question is from Bongi Mabele, and the question is Regulation 87A. Can you extend HOD's contract if he or she reached retirement age? The next question is from Gilodi. What about the requirement for integrity assessment and public service entry exams as enshrined in the national framework towards professionalization of the public service? Lorraine, please share the presentation. We will share the presentation and make it accessible to everybody. Caroline is asking, apologies, would like to take you back to Regulation 44.3. You emphasize that the salary offered to match the salary of the employee or external candidate must be within the salary level. So could you provide an example? If a candidate is currently on notch 3 of salary 12 and a proposed salary to offer them can be any notch as long as it is within the level. If we can please respond to those questions, and for the task team members who want to respond and maybe did not get the questions, please go to the webinar charts. I'm starting from the top and we'll go down from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Amu. Let me maybe start. Sorry, it seems like the team is having technical issues. In terms of an extension of a HOD contract, what the Public Service Act provides is that any employee who is required to be retained beyond a retirement age sorry, maybe let me say it again. So any employee who reaches a retirement age and is required to be retained for a further period, the Public Service Act allows that employee to be retained for a further 2 years. And that's provided currently. So generally, with the permission of executive authorities, employees may then be retained to the age of 67. That is contained in the Act itself. An example of recruitment, I think it was, Amu, you'll just correct me, was it a higher salary on recruitment?
Yes, it is.
So the principle on recruitment is that you are able to, as a department, to obtain the services of a person outside of that department. So that person who is employed in another department or in another job, or outside of the public service, you are allowed to recruit that person on a higher salary. But the way you recruit that person is that you cannot exceed the salary level of the post. So the example is if you have advertised a post at salary level 12 and the employee is currently being remunerated either outside the public service or within the public service at a salary higher than notch 1 of salary level 12, then the department is able to match that salary. So let's assume that person outside is now earning the equivalent of salary level, notch 4 of salary level 12. You are able to then bring that person into your department on salary level 12, and you are able to match the notch, and you are able to match it to the extent that you are able to offer 1 notch more to incentivize that person to come over to you. So that's the principle, but you can't exceed the salary band 12. So you can go up to the next closest notch. I hope that was the question. Amu, I think I answered them. I'm not sure if there's a team. I see the rest of the team have managed to join. Team, you may answer if possible, please.
Okay. Thank you, Renisha. They have joined. We just trying to get them to give them panelist rights because it looks like they need those to participate. So can we have Dr. Solomon's hand up? Yes, Dr. Solomon.
Yes, thanks, Amu. I just wanted to come back to what Renisha indicated about the issue of people resigning and the provisions that's made around that. I just want to also indicate that the section that already stands in which you can, when a person resigns, still stand that if you resign before your DC is completed, and you apply at a later stage for a government position again, then that disciplinary hearing can still be, or should still continue, and should be then starting from afresh. So that provision does not fall away. I just wanted to make that also clear.
Thank you, Dr. Solomon. We will come back to the questions on the chats. I think if we can just give people who have their hands up a chance to ask questions. I will take hands in the following order: Tabeleng, Homoto, Katu, Musa Dube. So we will start with Ntabeling, and then we will come back for more hands. Thank you.
Ntabelenga, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Ntabeling, you are muted. Okay, can we go to Komoto? We'll come back to Ntabeling.
Thank you very much, ma'am, and good morning. I'm rising on Regulation 49 and Regulation 57. Let's start with 49. The limitation that is imposed there that still exists regarding the 30% of the individual employee's monthly salary. In the situation of our department, I do not think that it is going to enable us to continue service delivery operations that are critical. For example, from time to time, we've got these foot and mouth outbreaks, we've got avian flu outbreaks, we've got all these other outbreaks in program 2. Now, that program requires a lot of overtime for us to be able to deal with service delivery pressures that are from time to time emanating in that area. How then are we going to then be able to deal with these pressures if overtime is still limited to 30% and with the hours are still limited there? My proposal is that the service delivery operations of departments should be accommodated for, and we should be able to then say, if there are pressing service delivery needs, departments may exceed this 30% up to probably a certain higher percentage, and the number of hours may be increased as well. As it stands, the department will never be able to deal with the challenges that are facing Program 2 in the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. That is regulation number 49. Come to regulation number 57. The limitation on the 12 months additional appointment, and that we may not even come to MPSA for any deviation, because then it's locked. From the presentation, it seems to me, and I may be wrong, it seems to me that this is locked. We cannot move beyond 12 months. Now, we have situations where there are court judgments. For example, in our situation, there is this special master court judgments, for example, from time to time, that gives specific additional appointments periods that are required. For example, 4 years and 3 years, 2 years. Now, how do we deal with these additional appointments if Regulation 57 has locked it like this, and that we may not even come to MPSA anymore because it is now locked at 12 months? My proposal is that we should also here at Regulation 57 look at service delivery requirements of different operations of different departments and court judgments as well. I thank you.
Thank you, Mekomoto. Mr. Murehu, Mr. Kato, please.
Mr. Kato, you may unmute yourself.
Can we go to Mr. Gambu? We will try and give Mr. Kato a chance. Oh, sorry. Yes. Can we go to Mr. Gambu? We will come back to Mr. Kato.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine has to do with Regulation 23. Since now the regulations empowers EAs to appoint ethics officers, has DPSA done a benchmarking exercise to determine what would be the recommended level of these ethics officers? If they have, what will that be? Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Katu, just one more try, please. Okay, Saki, it looks like Mr. Katu is having a bit of a challenge because I can see his mic is unmuted, but we cannot hear him. We will just try and get response to the first few questions that we took. I will give you a chance, Ms. Komozo. I'm noting that we skipped you earlier. Team DPSA, we have a question on overtime. We have a question on appointments additional to the establishment. And we also have a question on ethics officers. So if the policy people are here, please assist us in responding. Thank you.
I saw Amu, I saw that Samson Khate was in the meeting. So those remuneration related questions, perhaps we should unmute him and make him a panelist so that he can answer them.
Thank you, DG. Saki, can you please assist us with that? Dr. Solomon, we have a question on ethics. If you can please take that in the meantime.
Thanks, Amu. I didn't get to hear the whole one. What I got at the end was there was benchmark on ethics officers, but I did not get the full answer. Is it in terms of functions and job descriptions?
No, it's the question on whether we did a benchmark on the ethics officers. If you would like, we can ask Ms. Kambu to repeat the question for you.
The question was on the recommended, sorry, Amu. The question was on the recommended levels of ethics officers. Have we done some work on that since the EAs will be appointing the ethics officers? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, DG, for that clarity. Yes, we started work with a strengthening of ethics and integrity project, which is a Canadian-led project, the beginning of this year, to look at what is the ethics officers cohort that we have, what do they exist, what is their levels of experience, the area of focus, the management levels that they are on, exposure to management, exposure to ethics. So we did a benchmark, and based on that, we are currently working on a directive on ethics officers and the functions that they will be given a responsibility for. And I think that will be then the benchmark for us going forward in terms of the recommended levels, because the recommendation cannot be a one-size-fits-all. It will depend on the risk level of an organization. Certain bigger organizations will, of course, need a higher level of ethics officers, especially if there's more ethics risks. So in that sense, there will not be a one-size-fits-all approach, but to look at the specific environment itself and to make a recommendation in line with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Solomon. We also had a question from one of the, so we had a question on overtime and Regulation 57, team conditions of service and employment. Anybody to please take those questions?
That's the question that remuneration must take. Have we promoted Samson? Acting Chief Director responsible for remunerations.
Saki, please help us with that. I see we also have Ms. Claudia on the platform. If we can just give them
Yes.
rights to be panelists.
Thank you, Program Director. Mr. Khadebe can speak. We've allowed him to talk. He just needs to unmute his mic and then proceed.
Thanks. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yes, look, on the question that was raised by Oshomozo regarding the overtime, in terms of the current the amendments in relation to Regulation 49, that we need to take into account that now everything has to comply or the overtime hours must comply with the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, which meaning that it limits the employee to work up to the hours of 10 hours per week. So in any situation where there are any circumstances that would make one to require more overtime work to be conducted, then it means then the department would have to apply to the level minister to apply for those deviations. But then it should be noted that currently there needs to be sufficient motivations which require the department to submit a deviation in relation to Regulation 49. But as it stands, that everything must be in accordance with the provisions of BCEA. Thanks.
Thank you, Tata Khatebe. Mekomozo, if we can just please give our employment management team just a few minutes to come back to your question on Regulation 57. I believe the few questions that were asked have been responded to. Ms. Ntabeleng, I am not sure if you're still interested in asking a question. The other hand that we had, Okatu has indicated that he's having challenges with his mic, so he will text on the chats. Then I will go and take the next round of hands. We will start with Mr. Ntebo. After it will be, pardon me, please. Okay, then we will have Nkosipi, Balungile, Musa Dube, and Tabo in that order. Thank you.
Mr. Nsevu, please unmute yourself. Thank you. Mr. Nsevu, please. Mr. Nsevu, you may proceed. Secretariat, sorry, I see Mr. Nsevu is muted.
Mr. Nsevu, if you can please unmute yourself. Okay, maybe let's go to Balungile. We'll come back to Mr. Nsevu. Balungile. Balungile, you can talk.
Oh.
Mr. Mkunu, you're unmuted. You can ask your question.
I didn't do that.
Okay, Secretariat, can we move to Kakazile, please?
Can somebody mute Balungile, please?
Thank you, Chairperson. I have asked my question already. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Nkosi P.
Thanks, Chairperson. How are you?
We
Hello?
are well, thanks, and you, sir. We can hear you. You can ask your question.
Okay, thanks. Chairperson, I will start with the issue of lifestyle audit. If I heard the presentation very well, I heard that the directive is stating that it must be a member of SMS or DDG corporate services. Now, I want to double check if the risk was assessed before taking this decision, because there are some DDGs in the corporate services who are very controversial by nature. Then did DPSA look at the issue of integrity before they arrived to this decision? Because if the DDG for corporate services in a particular department is compromised, then how come that such a DDG can be tasked with the lifestyle audit? It's like trusting a criminal to investigate criminal matters. Secondly, is the issue of resignation of managers who are charged for misconduct or fraud or corruption in the public service. I heard in the presentation that if a person or an employee give a notice of 30 days to resign, that is acceptable. But I think when we are talking about ethics, we are talking about building a capable professional state. Such things must come to an end. If a manager or a senior manager is charged, that manager must not be allowed to resign till. So I'm coming from the school of thought that if you talk about ethics, you talk about accountability, you talk about like the government is talking about professionalization of the state, then issues that compromise the state must not be allowed to escape disciplinary actions. Lastly, on the issue of retaining of the retired public servant for a period of 2 years, I want to differ here with this resolution, simply because we do have, the country have rich of young people who are talented, who are very, very, very much clear on the mandate of the state. But returning retired people, whereas we have graduates who prove themselves, even including with the research that are used by the government in policies, in shaping the policies of the state. There are graduates who are researchers who are, let's give them, let's do away with this thing of returning people who retired after 2 years. Angibonge Sihlalo.
Siyabonga. Then first, I would like to ask Ms. Gambu, please, if you can lower your hand if you're not asking a question again. The next person will be Balungile.
Right.
Okay, we had Balungile next. We will move on to Umosa.
Mr. Dube, please unmute yourself. There we go.
Oh, thanks. Greetings to the public service family members and stakeholders. My first question, typed it on the webinar chat. Maybe just to start with it, I'll just read it. That the regulations makes provision for the job evaluation or grading system to be utilized in the public service to ensure that work of equal value is equally remunerated. What I want to find out is that why is it taking so long for the PSA to finalize this agent system, and in the response maybe to also get measurable progress made, as well as expected time frame by which this fiscal evaluation system shall be concluded. Then my second one is on the issue of the anti-corruption and ethical functions. There is a provision that says that the delegated authority or HOD shall establish a system that encourages reporting of allegations of corruption and unethical conduct. That's who oversees that system. My question is, in a sense, that what if those allegations, they also maybe implicate the head of department? Are there other controlling platform or mechanism outside of the department that can also monitor such allegations if they are being attended to, even outside of the departmental scope? Then the last one, it's based on the presentation on the indication that was made by our presenter that the PSA is aware when it comes to reviewal of maybe structures, that some departments are deviating from the consultations or recommendation made by the PSA. But the presenter made an emphasis that the PSA seems not to be welcoming maybe reasons or having a platform where such deviations or indicators of such deviations are brought to a certain platform and are being followed into, to ensure that because such deviation is also a form of like corruption and unethical practice, but it's like the indicators of such, the PSA is not willing to be informed of such deviations, and which kind of makes me wonder if there are, in fact, the question is, are there resources and platform for the PSA to process and take corrective actions in such cases of deviations? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dube. Our employment management team has been granted panelist rights. So I would like to give them a chance to go back to the question that we had earlier on Regulation 57 from Ms. Komoto. Team Employment Management.
Nico, can you please answer the question? The acting DDG.
Sorry,
Mr.
DG. I
please unmute.
see Nico is not on the panelist. They must give him rights and he must join them as a panelist.
Thank you. Finally, I've been given the rights. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and good morning. I still see that it's good morning. I think the question came on Regulation 57. There were two parts of that question. The first one is the issue on court judgments and how we must deal with those. And I think court judgments must be implemented or appealed. There's no other way of dealing with that. We just have to find a way of making sure that their implementation is done in a manner that is correct and as per the judgments. So there's nothing more we can say on that one. On Regulation 57 on additional to the appointments, I think there are a number of things that we have to agree and as a principle. As a principle, all appointments additional to the structure are meant to be temporary and are meant to serve a specific reason, whether it's an increase in work deliverables, or someone is not there to do particular things, or you are starting new functions and so forth. So by its very nature, appointments additional to the structure are not meant to be permanent. So if there is an identification that there is a need for such a function to become part of the core service delivery of the department, then the department has a duty to review its service delivery model, revise its organizational structures, and make sure that there is proper recruitment and that position is filled so that there is that clarity that is provided. Additionally, Ms. Kang, I think what we need to also understand is that we have seen a number of departments that have been taken to court and they have lost because they've created what is called the reasonable expectations, where people get appointed additional to the structure 12 months at the time, which is really unfair to the employee because there are benefits that they cannot access because they're just appointed on a contract and additional to the structure. So it creates a lot of challenges when it comes to the basic conditions of employment, rights that they have. And some of the departments are just avoiding developing their service delivery models, finalizing their structures, and so forth. So it is important for departments to ensure that core services become part of the structures and we advertise and we fill the post. So that we deliver on the service delivery considerations that we spoke about. I think that is the critical comment that was required from my side. I'll lower the hand now. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Amu.
I can say that, Mabunda. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, keeping in mind that this webinar is scheduled until 12 o'clock, I have noted the following hands for our last round of questions. We will have Thabo Kekani, Mike Moyo, Mr. Given, Mr. Skosana, and Mr. Tobisi, after the Team DPSA has responded to the last round of questions that we had. Team DPSA, we had a question from Nkosipi on lifestyle audits, resignations of employees who are managers, and reappointment of former employees for the period of 2 years. We've had a question from Omosa on job grading and controlling mechanisms for instances where HODs have committed misconduct. I would like our team to please respond to these questions. Thank you.
When it's your time, there will be a pop-up. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Secretariat, please mute people who are speaking.
Handle DG, we may proceed.
Dr. Solomon, over to you.
Thanks, Amu. There's two questions that I've heard. The one was Mr. Nyandu on the issue of the DDGs selected as the heads for the ethics committees. And then there was a question of I think it's from Mr. Dube, on the system that encourages employees to report allegations of corruption. So those are the two that I want to respond to, if that is fine with you, Chair.
Yes, please do.
Okay, thanks. So the first one, in terms of the issue of the seniority of the chair of the ethics committee, because ethics is seen as such an important part of the management of a department, the decision was taken to have it on the highest level possible. But then the problem that we had was where we in the previous regulations, we were very prescriptive, and then we indicated that it must be a DDG. And that gave us a lot of issues with the provincial departments because of the lack of a number of DDGs that could actually then also fulfill this post. So the whole idea was to address that issue, and not necessarily an issue of unethical DDGs. I think if the processes are followed as it should in terms of appointment of people, recruitment, promotions, and that, issues of ethics should not be then a problem when coming to the head of the ethics committee. So the whole idea there was to address the problem that provinces expressed in terms of the level of the unavailability of DDGs to then fill that position. The second question, that of Mr. Dube, was around the issue of the system that needs to be established. Now, this system is part of the system of whistleblowing, but it's not the system of whistleblowing. If one look at what the requirements of this is, it's to have a system where you as a department have access to allegations of corruptions, in unethical conduct, and so forth, and where you report then the systems to the citizens, but also your staff, so that they know where to report this. The idea behind this is to get information or intelligence that you can use to assess your ethics risks, your corruption risks, and to mitigate that then through the actions of the department. So in an ideal situation, the department will then receive information from concerned members, and that information then will be reacted on, and it will be become part of the mitigation, risk mitigation plans of a department. So when you then, as an individual, do not feel that you can report, it nowhere it says you must. It says that there's a confidentiality of reporting, which is the only place in law in South Africa where actually employees are protected in terms of confidentiality. This is not even in the private sector. So it's to create a circumstances where people really want to blow the whistle and report. But if there's still a fear that if it's, for example, the DG or the head of the department or so, then it doesn't force you to use this. There's also other processes, and that you can read under the guide on whistleblowing that the DPSA reported in 2018 on, we released. But you can also look at a very good toolkit for public servants that PARI released a few years ago, of processes where you can report specific issues to specific departments that has the mandate to look at that. For example, if there's financial irregularity, to report it to the AG. If there's issues around appointments or so, to do that to the Public Service Commission or the Public Protector. If there's criminality, to report that to the police. That can also be reported under the Public Service Commission National Anti-Corruption Hotline. So it's part of the system of making sure that information that is critical, that will impact on the reputation or the functioning of the department, is responded to. because it is known to the managers of that department. So I just thought to also bring that in as well. Thanks, Alma.
Thank you, Dr. Solomon. We also have questions on resignations of managements charged with misconduct. I believe this was responded to previously. Retaining retired public servants after 2 years, job grading systems of equal work for equal pay. We also have a question on controlling instances where HODs alleged to have conducted misconduct. If we can just please have response to that, team. Thank you.
Sorry, Amu, I can't raise my hand. I don't know why, but I'm having difficulty. But I just wanted to make a few comments in response as well. One, on the resignations, what I want to add is that there is a requirement that if a person resigns before the completion of the case and has served the 30-day notice and still the case has not been completed, then you update that information on PERSAL as well, so that when another department considers employing that person, they are able to pick up that information and also make decisions and can be able to talk to the department and get more information. Also, you can transfer the case to the department where the person is moving to. If it's still in the public service, you can transfer the case and that department is expected to continue with that particular case. And we've had instances where colleagues in the public service have used these tools in order to be able to still follow up on cases that people have resigned. If the issues are related to fraud and corruption, obviously the department must also open a case with law enforcement agencies, so the law enforcement agencies can pursue the matter even if a person has resigned. In any case, whilst an internal disciplinary is continuing, also the criminal process should be unfolding. So then a person is able to be held accountable. I don't know how many people have you seen who are out of the public service, who are implicated in certain cases where law enforcement is bringing them into the book, either former HODs or former CFOs or former senior managers or employees generally in the public service. So it doesn't mean that a fraud and corruption case dies because a person has exited the public service. The other question around deviations that are not approved by DPSA and departments still go ahead. We have signed an MOU with the AG, and part of the work that the AG, we have agreed with them, is that they are going to help with auditing some of these decisions that we make and departments continue to implement. So integrating that information into their audit processes so that we use existing instruments such as the AG to be able to do that particular work as well to support. But also the DPSA monitoring function should be able to pick up these cases in some instances and escalate the matters through our MPSA to the relevant ministers for action to be taken. The DPSA, MPSA can only take action on such matters in terms of disciplinary when it comes to the DG DPSA. The other executive authorities, which is ministers in other departments, are responsible to take action against their DGs as well. And for us, part of mechanisms that we have is that we can escalate certain matters to the portfolio committee in Parliament as well, and then the relevant EAs can be called in to further account on such matters. On the, I just wanted to make a point, a broader point, that there are directives that we've revised directives, and after these regulations, we will be in a process of releasing directives to replace some of the existing directives, but also new directives on new areas that are coming through. So you could expect, for instance, in Q3, before the end of Q3, that there will be directives that could be coming out on the professionalization of the public service. So they also deal with lots of employment issues that relates to professionalization. There's also a directive that should come out on the discipline management, a strategy that we approved in the previous financial year. It will also give clarity on some of the issues around discipline that colleagues have asked questions on in a further detail. And also there is a directive on the public service charter implementation by departments that is also due to come out. So we are in a program of reviewing directives and issuing new directives to support the implementation of these regulations and the other work that we're doing, like in the professionalization framework. There was a question about why did we take so long to finalize the JE? I think that the process of developing our JE involved getting a service provider to provide technical support to the work that needed to be done. And we struggled a little bit. I think we had to advertise about 2 or 3 times before we got a service provider that we could contract to do the work. The service provider has been contracted. The team in the department has been set up to work with that service provider. And this work is also overseen by our ICT, the committee that deals with IT within the department. And we, in terms of our plans, by the beginning of the 4th quarter, we are going to be testing system configurations of the new system with the existing, with the MPSA portfolio departments. And then at the beginning of the new financial year, I think in May, we are rolling out the new system from the plans that I've seen in terms of this. We have written to the DGs, or I think there is a circular we're issuing today or tomorrow where we are communicating this information to colleagues, and there's some work that we want to do with people who are busy with JE and heads of departments as part of this work. So if colleagues can check, maybe by end of today, that circular will be out. The last comment I want to make on the retired, there was a question about retired people being given a further opportunity for 2 years to work. Ideally, this shouldn't happen indeed, because we have lots of unemployment of young people in the public service, well, in South Africa. But there is an issue around certain skills, that skills transfer may take longer. So we allow that opportunity for skills transfer. It's not a must that a person must be extended after 65. However, you look at the situation and the conditions within that particular department. So you look at the issue of skills and skills transfer, but there are also other specialist areas, and we get this a lot in health, that there is one specialist oncologist, for instance, in Limpopo as an example, and this specialist has reached, a specialist physician has reached a retirement age, but the department would still want to utilize that specialist for a further 2 years, because the pipeline for them in terms of developing these specialist skills is still at a very early stages. And so if that specialist is allowed to retire, to leave the system, there will be no one in the entire province who can be able to provide the services that the specialist is providing. So we have a number of those cases, in particular in the Department of Health, and I don't think they're limited to the Department of Health as well, as well. So we need to accommodate that possibility. And I must say that this is not a provision that is utilized a lot in department. We see a lot of people that are exiting the public service once they reach 65. Yes, I think those are the questions that I just wanted to pull together, Amu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DG. I think the second round of questions has been answered. I will take the third and final round of questions. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, I can't see if their hands are still up, but I will just call them out. And if we can just please be mindful of time, gentlemen. I see it's mostly gentlemen who have their hands up. If we can just please be mindful of time, I will open the floor to Mr. Thabo Kekane, Mike Moyo, Mr. Given Ndijwa, Mr. Skosana Joseph, and Mr. Mtobi Sikilo. In that order, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on the transfer amendments to transfers. Don't you think maybe that would create a situation where some posts are not filled through advertising? Because as we know, most employees always seek transfer from their departments to another, either because of family issues or not being satisfied in their present work environment. Yeah, thank you. I'll end there.
Okay, I thank you, Tate Kekane. Just to come in, ladies and gentlemen, before we take the next hand, I would like to bring to your attention that I have posted my email on the chats. We will not be able to go through all the questions that we have on the chats. So if we missed your question, please forward the question on my email. I will make sure that it reaches the relevant unit and you will be responded to. The next hand is Mr. Moyo.
Good morning, Minister and colleagues. My question is about the interpretation of Regulation 44, which is a C and a D part. I think someone asked the question, but I think it was not probably answered in the way. So it's a follow-up to the question that was asked before. So the question, I think in simple, it's saying, if you are appointed as a level 7, for example, and then you get a counter offer. Oh, no, sorry, you get an offer, an external offer in another department for a level 9. Can the department, your current department, offer you that level 9 post as a counter offer so that they can retain you? And we're talking about a post that also exists in your department and it's funded and it's vacant. Can they offer you a post higher than where you are to counter offer or retain you? And that's a level 7 to level 9. The second part of that question will also be, can you also do the same thing for a level 12 to an SMS post? I think I saw a colleague asking the same question. So a level 12, and there's an SMS post, a vacant post that exists within the department, vacant, funded, and then you get an offer in another department externally, a level 13, which is an SMS. Can they also offer you that? The reason why I'm asking this is because ever since, even before the regulations were amended, the interpretation seems to be the same. It's just, the wording seems to be the same. It's just the interpretation that now you're not sure whether, are you amending that? The amendment the intention was to clarify that this is possible, or was it any different from where it was in the last time before this one was amended? I'm talking about before today. Was it any different, the understanding, or the intention was to amend or to clarify? Is it to amend or to clarify the current situation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ndijwa.
Thank you, Amo, and good morning, Minister and colleagues. I speak under corrections. I just need clarity. Under these regulations amplifying matters in the Public Service Amendment Bill, which is currently under consideration by Parliament, in which case then they should not necessarily commence on the 1st of November 2023, but rather after the bill has been passed, if that's the case. The second question is around your limit on overtime that is payable. I seem to have heard that it will be limited to about 30% of the basic salary of an employee. At a glance, it appears that that section is peremptory. Now, I heard the response saying that people may apply to the minister for a deviation. My view is that if we don't indicate that in exceptional cases, people may apply to deviate from that particular provision, any deviation that the minister approves without that proviso would be ultra-virus. she would have exceeded her powers in the sense that there would not have been an empowering provision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Skosana?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if I'm here and I'm audible.
Yes, you are, sir.
Yes, thank you. And greetings to the Minister, as well as, the senior managers of this department. Actually, my question that I wanted to get clarification on, it has been partly addressed by Mr. Solomon. But the issue that I wanted to raise, maybe for further clarity, is the issue where now the officials will want to blow the whistle, but they are so afraid because of, they feel like they are not protected. To say, are there any measures to ensure that, employees that are very interested to blow the whistle will be protected? Because I think what we are getting on the ground is that, once they report on any act of corruption or malfeasance, the likelihood that they'll be known is very high. So if I can just get that, is there any measures that, the government is planning in terms of protecting those who want to blow the whistle? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our last question will come from Mr. Mtobi Sitilo. Mr. Tilo, okay, sorry. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Mr. Moyo covered what I wanted to ask, so I think it's fine. The response to that question would answer what I wanted to ask as well.
Thank you, sir. Just also to mention, ladies and gentlemen, that we will put the regulations on the DPSA's website, and along with the web regulations, we will put a clause-by-clause explanation of each amendment. But as I mentioned before, please feel free to send me an email on any inquiries that you will have. Team DPSA, back to you. We've had a few questions. I noted the question from Mr. Mike on Regulation 44. I think I see Ms. Naidu's hand is up. We had a question from Regulation 44. Mr. Mdijwa asked a few questions on the regulations as well, Mr. Skosana and Mr. Gilo. I will give the platform to Ms. Naidu to respond.
Thank you, Amo. Thank you, colleagues, for the questions. Maybe I want to start with the Regulation 44 and explain the amendment itself. So Regulation 44 in respect of the recruitment processes, so awarding employees a higher salary on recruitment, there was a policy amendment in it, so it's not merely correcting the language. Under the current regulations, the regulations as they stand before the amendment, what we allowed as a process to award a higher salary when you recruit somebody from another department is we limited it to recruiting people within the public service. So we said, if you were employed in the public service and you were offered a position within the public service, we allowed you to retain your salary, your higher salary on appointment in the new job. What we have done in this amendment, in addition to cleaning it up, we have also opened that provision to people who are not employed in the public service. So if you are employed outside of the public service in the private sector and you are earning a salary higher than the first notch of a salary level to which you are being offered a position, the department offering you that position can also offer you a higher salary to match the salary you are earning outside the public service. So that's the fundamental change in the regulation. But maybe to put it into examples, and I've seen chats where you are asking for examples. So there's twofold. The one thing this provision doesn't do, it doesn't allow you to get promoted. So I think the principle of Regulation 44 is to get the best skills for the job, but to also remunerate the job as the job should be remunerated. So what you can't be doing is paying somebody the salary of a DDG at level 15 to do the job of a chief director at level 14. That's where we are saying the regulation doesn't allow you to do that. The regulation also doesn't allow you to be appointed in another DDG post without competing for that post itself. So it doesn't allow promotions. What the regulation does do, it says if the post advertised and to which you are being offered a job is at a level 12, and I'll use the level 12 example, and you are currently employed either inside the public service or outside the public service at a salary higher than notch 1 of level 12, then the appointing authority can then offer you a higher salary to match what you are earning outside of this job. So outside in another department, outside the public service. And when you are brought into the system, into this post, the highest salary that can be offered to you is the salary of the post. So the job itself is worth a salary level 12. You will be offered the maximum of a salary level 12, nothing beyond that. You can't go to 13, you can't go to 14, you can't go anywhere else. There's one exclusion in this process, and that exclusion arises from a collective agreement that recognizes years of service on particular salary levels. That is the grade progression prescripts. What happens in those prescripts, the prescripts say if you've been at salary level, and I'll give an example, I don't know if it's the right salary level, but I'll give the example. If you've been at salary level 5 for 15 years, the collective agreement allows you to grade progress to level 6. If you've grade progressed to level 6 and you apply for a job at level 6, you will be appointed to match at a higher salary to match where you've grade progressed to. So if you're on the 3rd notch of level 6, you're being appointed in a level 6 job, you will get the 4th notch of level 6. If you are at level 5 and you've grade progressed, so you're earning a salary at level 6, and you apply for a job at level 5, what the regulations have done as an exception is to allow you to transfer to the level 5 post, but not, and to retain your level 6 salary simply because you're moving across and there's provisions for that. But you are not allowed to, so your salary will not be reduced. I hope I've answered. So if you're moving, excuse me, sorry. If you're moving from 5 to 5, you maintain your grade progression because you've done, in terms of the collective agreement, you're eligible to be earning a level 6. I hope I've clarified that, but if I haven't, then again, Amu has suggested that we will provide contact details, and we are happy to engage on that. In terms of the transfers, I think transfers is an important provision, and colleagues, we must understand that there is a need to enable transfers in the public service. Transfers rationally require that when you move from one post to the other, you must be able to do the job of the post that you are being transferred to. So the idea is to allow the mobility of staff to where departments need that staff. The effect of that will be that that post will be filled through a transfer. The Act already allows it. The Act enables transfers as a mechanism to fill a post. Of course, departments will make that call. If there is somebody who is requiring to move either for personal reasons or for reasons linked to the operations of the department, then that transfer will take place. If the EA decides transfers is not an appropriate mechanism, the EA will make that decision and it will be advertised. But I think what we must remember in the process, to create a total ban on transfers means that when people move across, there is no continuity of service. People lose benefits in those processes, etc. So we just have to make sure that There are enablers. Whether those enablers are suitable or not is decisions that are left to departments. In terms of the overtime, I think given it was your question, what we have done through these regulations is to fix immediate challenges. We know that the bills are in Parliament, and I've said that in the opening remarks, is that we have the Public Service Amendment Bill in Parliament, and we will have to do new regulations to align with those particular provisions of the Act. Unfortunately, these regulations needed to be attended to immediately. It couldn't wait for that amendment bill. Hence, we said this is basically to fix immediate problems in the short term, but the long-term plan is to have revised regulations aligned to the amendment bills when they are passed into law. The other issue that was raised and I want to deal with is the minister's power to deal with deviations. There is Regulation 4, which comes from the primary law itself. So in the Public Service Act, it says the minister may make regulations and may make regulations relating to the power to deviate. And Regulation 4 is that provision given that enables the minister to consider deviations on all regulations. But as we consider deviations to all regulations, I think it's important to note that we must not undermine the principles of the main act. So if the Public Service Act requires something as a matter of fact, you cannot use the power to deviate in the regulations to undermine the principal act. We, as a principle, we don't deal with deviations on all matters. There are certain matters where matters are deviated, and those matters are particularly, it must be justified and necessary for purposes of employment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Naidu. We had two more questions from Mr. Skosana and Mtobisi. I don't know if Team DPSA would like to respond to those questions.
Amu, I have a question that I want to answer on the protection of public servants on lifestyle audits, but I couldn't hear who the person's surname was.
Okay, please go ahead and respond. Yes.
So the question in brief, and I'm also mindful of time, and this topic can also drag out for an hour or more because it's a very interesting and relevant topic. But the question in brief is about what protection is there for officials when they blow the whistle. There was mention made to what did government do and what did we do as the DPSA. So in terms of government, I can maybe just in short indicate that there was a re-overhaul of the Protected Disclosures Act that looked at more protections for individuals, that is employees, also to bring it more in line with international practices around whistleblowing. And then that found its expression also into the National Anti-Corruption Strategy that was adopted by government. And this strategy as a whole, pillar one of the strategy addressed the issue of whistleblowing, of creating awareness around it, explaining to people the processes that should be followed and so forth. So there's a number of work that has been done. The National Anti-Corruption Advisory Committee also started with a work stream where they are across government looking at issues of how to effectively and quickly deal with whistleblowing, like the issue of giving people incentives to blow the whistle, what protection measures, the possibility of a judge that will look at whistleblower cases to speed up those. So there's a lot of work in government as a whole to address the issue of whistleblowing. On DPSA level, we, with this regulations that we amended, we brought it closer to the Protected Disclosures Act and the requirements of the Act, especially by making the processes clear, the systems clear, to force departments to have systems internally that people will know where to blow the whistle to, how they will be protected, and also for the public, not only for the public servants, but also for citizens to know what systems are in place. And that is especially for service providers and those that also are part of the team, but sometimes have information and they don't know where to blow the whistle. So there is that number, that protection that is provided. I would also beg people to look at that toolkit that PARI, P-A-R-I, developed. You can Google on the internet and you can draw it for free, and the guide of the DPSA, because there we explain what protections are there for individual, especially the role of the ethics officer and the role of the ethics committee in that. But I think in main, we all are protected under the Protected Disclosure Act, that where you do see things that will be a threat to your life, there's processes and procedures that you can follow. First, starting internally, but if it is so grave, you don't even need to follow the internal processes, but then there's guidance on where you can go to immediately. I can also indicate that the DPSA currently is working with the Office on Witness Protection, where we are working on a very speedy process, and we've already did 7 cases where if you feel that you are immediate and life threat, then you report to the DPSA, the TAO unit, and then they will immediately bring you into contact with the witness protection, and then the witness protection will immediately start to assist you with the process of making sure that nothing happens to you. And that is not only when there's real threats, but also where there's disciplinary cases and you need to go and report, and there's a real threat that you will be, that some harm will come your way. So in brief, that is the response that I can give, but I would really beg you to make use of that PARI toolkit. And there's a number of those toolkits that will guide public servants to know their rights in terms of the PDA. One of that is the protected disclosure that you can make when you feel that you will be victimized at work. And if you make a protected disclosure, then and you follow the correct procedures, then you cannot be dismissed. No disciplinary hearing can continue against you until that issue is resolved. So have a look at that toolkit. Thanks, Amu.
Thank you, Dr. Solomon. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the session of our program. I am aware that we have, as of now, 712 participants. Clearly, we did not get through to everybody's question. I'm still encouraging colleagues and ladies and gentlemen to please use my email to send us any questions that you may have. I would like to go to the last item on our program today, which is closing remarks from our Honorable Deputy Minister, Dr. Kana Majeke. Minister, over to you, ma'am.
DM, please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Actually, the mic and the audio is disabled.
Hi, DM, we can hear you. You can proceed.
Oh, the audio is able to now. The video is disabled.
We can hear you, DM. Your mic is working now.
Good morning. Is it still morning? Good morning to all. I want to manage to put on the video because it's disabled. Let me just take the opportunity of talking to you now this morning. It says start the video. Let me see because there's a message on the screen. There's no effect to that message. I will then therefore just
We can see you,
proceed.
DM, on the video. DM, we can see you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, DG. Honorable Minister for Public Service and Administration, please remove the message on the screen, host.
What is the message saying, DM?
It says you can now start your video. Host has asked you something. Can you remove the message? Let's stop communicating with the host.
DM?
So I can't be in the position
DM
to
just, I think
Yes.
DM just accept it because now you muted it. Just accept that and continue speaking. That's fine, DM. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, DG. Thank you all. I've just acknowledged the presence of the minister amongst us. To acknowledge you, DG, your presence this morning in this meeting, the DPSA team responsible for development of the regulations, all senior managers present here this morning with us, the public servants, stakeholders, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. And I must actually join the minister to say happy birthday to Tata O.R. Tambo. His perspective has always been access to socioeconomic rights for people by the government. And of course, this will be implemented through the public service regulations as revised and being launched this morning. Thanks, Minister, for corrections you made about the pronunciation of my name. Indeed, charity begins at home. When I was requested yesterday afternoon to do the vote of thanks at this event, I realized that the job is done and there's no looking back. And of course, there has been comments about technicalities as to whether we really being ahead of ourselves with the bills that are in Parliament. Thanks, Renisha, for responding to the question. Program Director, today marks a significant milestone in our journey towards building an ethical, capable, and developmental public service based on public service norms and standards. On behalf of the Ministry for Public Service and Administration, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to all distinguished guests, stakeholders, representatives of government departments on this virtual platform who have joined us on this important occasion to launch the Public Service Amendment Regulations of 2023. I wish to also extend my gratitude to senior management and personnel of the Department of Public Service and Administration who have worked tirelessly and embarked on consultative process that engaged stakeholders in the development process of these regulations. It is hoped that the revised regulations will help shape a better performing and capacitated public service, bringing about a strong, fair, and smooth running public administration, because administration defined is transformation of policy or regulations into action. Regulations can make or break administration. Administration with good policies is enabled, and it will position better service delivery, meeting with ease the needs of those who are served. These policies are expected to be enabling mechanisms that should put meaning in the legislative framework that guides the mandate of the Department of Public Service and Administration based on the integrated approach to public service. The bureaucracy that manages implementation of regulations, if it goes unchecked, may hinder the good intentions of policies developed, because it is always the intention of government when we come up with policies for policies to be enabling mechanisms. These regulations consciously address identified red tape glitches. Furthermore, I would like to thank our esteemed partners and stakeholders from various government departments, civil society organizations, and the private sector for being part of this last leg of gazetted revised regulations that will take effect from the 1st of November 2023. Your invaluable participation and input has ensured that this realignment process is comprehensive, transparent, and is based on sound aligned principles with delivery to citizens' needs improved. Moving forward, we will solicit your feedback on your experience with new policies towards evaluation of implemented policies for future policy or regulation revision and amendment. Minister, as stated earlier, the launch of these regulations is just a part of a journey. The implementation process is an ongoing endeavor, as DG has mentioned. The gazetting of regulations on the 27th of October for implementation on the 1st of November creates a new dawn in delivery of service to people of South Africa and conditions of service for public servants. The awareness campaigns, workshops, and support that should be provided by Department of Public Service and Administration across government to ensure proper understanding of regulations must not be underscored. Government departments are urged to review their existing policies, procedures, and systems to align them with the new regulations. This will involve updating internal policies, codes of conduct, and guidelines to ensure consistency and compliance with the regulatory framework. Regular assessments, feedback mechanisms, and stakeholder consultations are vital for identifying challenges, gaps, and areas that require further improvement. Lessons learned from the initial implementation phase should inform the process of refining and enhancing regulations. As we conclude this launch event, let us remember that the journey towards an ethical, capable, and developmental public service is ongoing. The Public Service Amendment Regulations serve as a foundation for further transformation towards well-capacitated public service. Let us continue to work together, fostering a culture of integrity, accountability, and excellence in delivery of public service. Thank you once more for your unwavering support and commitment. Together, we can realize our vision of public service that truly serves the people and contribute to the growth and development of our beloved country. A lot of ground has been covered by these new regulations. Applicability of regulations must be monitored to unlock various sore points in administration. Permanent appointment of an ethics officer creates hope for a more stable arrangement towards uprooting corruption in public service. And this does not necessarily mean that there should be an impression that when you talk about public service, we talk about the service of people who are corrupt. We work on mechanisms to uproot corruption because we do know that due to human frailties, in certain instances, there is corruption that happens, which is not allowed in public service. Job description security must go beyond removing 12 months period requirement for the contract workers, but also have absorption enforcement mechanisms for those on contract for more than 2 years to avoid having a government that is run through acting and contract appointments, which is believed may become a breeding ground for corrupt practices used on vulnerable appointees with uncertain future. May we all continue to grow South Africa together. Like the President has said, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, no one must be left behind. I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our program today. I would like to thank you all for attending and staying with us up until now, and also bearing with us and the little glitches that we had at the beginning of the webinar. Thank you very much for attending. We are now at the end of our program. Thank you.